Hi guys, it's Jessica. Welcome and welcome back to the Not Carrie Bradshaw YouTube channel. In this video, we are discussing season 2, episode 3 of Interview with a Vampire. We have so much to unpack in this episode. It was so meaty, so let's get right into it. Okay, so Daniel ventures a little bit like off campus, and he's at this sushi restaurant where he gets clocked by this random dude. Mind you, he's in Dubai. So this random dude lets on that he knows that Daniel is interviewing vampires. And it's like, how do you even know that this is super random? He kind of presents himself as a fan of Daniel's work, which he might be, we don't know. And once he gets back to Louis and Armand's place, this brings up a really good question. How do vampires navigate a very digital world? Because what we learned in this episode is that one of the foundational rules about vampirism is remaining a mystery. But if you suspend belief for just long enough to conceive of a world where vampires exist in our world, how would they never be on social media? How would no one ever clock them, right? Like, we even have these examples where people have found these ancient photos of folks where this person looks like Pharrell, and it's like, well, Pharrell hasn't aged, maybe Pharrell's a vampire. You know what I'm saying? So if vampires existed in our reality, how would they avoid the digital world? Sorry, you guys can hear the sounds of Brooklyn in the background. Y'all will be okay. And Armand makes a point that our devices actually make it really easy to distract us. There is some truth to that, but it's also like, well, how are you not being seen? How are you never in the background of something? And if you lived for this long as a person in, you're in the world, you are of the world, how would you have never been seen, clocked, whatever? So we start to get more of Armand's story. So Armand was the leader of this coven, which he still is. And at the time, vampires were ruled by very ancient laws and practices where they really lived in the shadows. There was no real life for them. They lived in just this basement amongst each other. They lived in squalor. It was not the luxurious concept of vampirism that we have seen Lestat participate in, or even the way that Louis and Armand live now, right? They lived in squalor. And Armand became aware that there was another vampire nearby, and that other vampire was Lestat. So Lestat was living his life out in the open as a theater performer, and Armand feels compelled to bring him to heel. He needs to become a part of this coven because he's living life kind of among humans. And Armand goes to confront him. And something that I love about this, for one thing, it's really nice to see Lestat as a neo, right? As a newbie, as a novice, and to recognize that Armand is actually the pro fight. He's the professional, he's the experienced one. He is immaculately powerful. He can suspend time, he can move objects, he can do more than just read minds and communicate telepathically. And Lestat wants to know how to do this. And he comes to the coven where all of these, ancient vampires are kind of slithering around. And this kind of reminded me when Armand was confronting Lestat on the street where he's with his lover, and Lestat wants to protect his lover, this is kind of a different Lestat from the one that we have come to know, right? It reminded me somewhat of Imitation of Life when Sarah Jane's black mom comes to confront her and she denies her because Sarah Jane was white passing. It's like Lestat has been able to be somewhat human passing, and this has given him a certain amount of pride that these other vampires did not really have. So Armand is playing chess, not checkers, by luring Lestat to come to this coven and tell them, we are the gods. You don't have to live like this. Ain't nobody gonna beat your ass. Do what you want to do. Yeah, live your life. And Armand set this up on purpose because he knew that his followers probably wouldn't have believed this concept if it was coming from him. And, you know, they all leave him, and he thinks that they've all killed themselves because they couldn't reconcile the life that Lestat showed them with the life that he had them living. Unbeknownst to him, those vampires actually went and joined Lestat, and this is where they kind of formed this theater, this hiding out in the open, and um, yeah, just existing more as kind of people vampires living, you know, amongst us in the world. And Louis and Armand, I'm sorry, Armand and Lestat actually become lovers. But once this theater is founded and he's, you know, made sure that it's taken care of in perpetuity from a financial perspective, and he has learned Armand's tricks, because a part of Armand bringing him in was, I can teach you how to be a more powerful vampire. Because at first Lestat was like, what do you have to offer me? Why would I come join you? So once he gets what he wants, he abandons them. He leaves his lover, who he turned. And it was interesting too. Armand told Lestat that his lover wasn't going to actually survive the transformation because he wasn't strong enough, but he does survive, and just put a push pin in that. So Lestat basically broke Armand's heart, similarly to kind of how Lestat broke Louis' heart to a different degree. I think that emotional violence can be just as impactful as physical violence, and I think he did both to Louis. So another thing that I was considering is the vampires that were a part of the original, like, ancient coven. They were still trying to please God through serving Satan. And I think that, again, suspending disbelief, if you had the opportunity to have everlasting life, would you still believe in a higher power when, for mortals, all of us living in this reality, a lot of us are trying to be good people, or are trying to live a life that's pleasing to a higher power for the promise of heaven, which is, you know, quote unquote, like eternal life. If that were off the table, you would probably be navigating the world something like Lestat as well. You don't have the prospect of being punished by anyone, because you can live as long as you want to live, until or unless you decide to off yourself or someone else offs you. But if you are a damned creature, you are already going to hell. Heaven isn't even an option for you. So you might not be as invested in religion as a mortal person would. And I think that's part of them abandoning these very, like, old ways and doing something new. So I also want to say Lestat looked good. I feel like Lestat is one of those people who's, like, on paper, or like descriptively, they're attractive, quote unquote. Not really my cup of tea, but in some of these scenes, I was like, okay, Lestat, I see you. I don't know, maybe they made him, did they make him look younger? Because they don't age. There was something about the way that he was presented in this episode that I kind of saw him a little bit differently. So Claudia and Louis are trying to come up with their storyline about how they came to be so that they aren't discovered by the coven, because Claudia is basically like pledging slash being hazed to join the coven. Louis is not interested, right? And so they decide that their maker is this person named Bruce, who is actually the person who last season we saw assaulted Claudia, but Louis forbade Daniel from reading those pages because he didn't really want Claudia's assault to be discussed or exploited or whatever. And we don't know the full extent, right, of what happened there. But they use him as kind of an archetype, because to Claudia's point, a good lie always has a little bit of truth to it. So Louis is kind of like the Yoko Ono of this situation, because he's kind of pulling Armand away from the coven, and they're spending this time together, and Armand is trying to convince Louis to join the coven. But for Louis, this is his first time really being free. You know, in America, um, your pedigree determined so much of your ability to thrive, especially as a Black person in the Jim Crow South. You just didn't have the option of freedom like they had in Paris. So why would he want to run to being under the thumb or under the rules of someone else when he just kind of got a taste of freedom living in Paris? And you know, there's some logic, and you know, I can understand that. So I'm still trying to figure out if is Lestat really in Louis's mind, or is Louis just haunted by his choice? Because if we have trauma that we don't address, that we don't process, that we don't speak about, that we bury, it will come back to haunt you. It will come back in really dark ways. You will project that pain onto other people, which Louis ends up doing. He ends up killing this random person in the park and just leaving their body there. And that comes back to actually haunt him. So as he's spending time with Armand, he can see that Lestat is still very much in his mind. And Louis finally admits what Armand has known all along. And he just wants him to say it, you know. And he's like, you know, so what, are you going to kill me for like not following this rule that I didn't even know existed? Because to his point, Lestat never told them anything about like any rules or how anything goes. Like he was very much like their vampire father. So it was like, and your parents are kind of like your gods, right? Whatever, especially when you were a child, whatever your parents tell you is what you perceive to be reality. How the fuck was he supposed to know about these like unspoken gang, sorority, fraternity rules? No one told him. He knew that he was being abused, and he and his sister daughter needed to get the fuck on from their father, husband, whatever, brother, whatever you want to call it. It was just too much, right? And at the same time, this guy can like hear the conversation that they're having. And that guy, Jean Paul, looks like the same guy who was like in the sushi, like the sushi guy and the cafe guy. That's the same person, right? So at the same time, that person sends Daniel a file, and he's like, you know, just something for you to consider while you interviewing these people about who they really are. And he opens up this file that alludes to some sort of fire at the theater. So the night before Claudia's probate, I guess you could say, before her coming out or becoming an official member of the coven, she reveals to Louis more of the details of her assault. And she says, you know, Lestat could have told us that there was a coven, like a beautiful coven of people in Paris. He could have put us on a boat and said, go out there and meet these people, see what the world has to offer. And instead, he just said, vampires in the world are ruthless. And she said, you know, I didn't believe him until I met one. And she talks about how Bruce broke her bones and buried her under floorboards and assaulted her, and before, after enduring, would say that he loved her while also like harming her, until one day he said that he was tired of looking at her gloomy face and just rode off. And at this point, when are we gonna find Bruce and kill him? Because what we talking about here? Let's go find him. Let's go take him out the game. Let's go throw him on a fire. I'm upset. Okay. So at Claudia's probate, Santiago is talking to Louis telepathically about how they need to handle he's talking to Armand telepathically about how they need to handle Louis. The fact that he left this body just in the park, right, puts them all at risk of being discovered. Because he's not a part of the group, he's not bound by the rules that the group is bound by. So they're not safe. If you can't bring him to heel, then, and he needs to be punished for killing Lestat. And Santiago is like, you killed my maker for far less. So who is he that he shouldn't have to suffer some sort of consequences for his behavior, right? So Armand agrees to do it and walks Louis home, like under, you know, through the sewer. And he, you know, Louis is perfectly fine to accept his fate as long as Claudia will be safe. His whole thing is about Claudia being able to have a full and safe and well life. And Armand tells him that like Claudia is not long for this world, so it doesn't even matter. And he's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, one of their ancient rules is that you don't turn a person who is disabled or who is a child, because you are condemning them to a life stuck in that position. And I was like, is that kind of ableist? Are the vampires ableist? But I could see that because they are vain creatures. But I could also kind of understand that to a certain extent. If you, yeah, I guess I could see that. Like if you are a certain kind of disabled, someone would have to always take care of you, and people would be able to tell that you're never aging. So, okay, I guess I can give some credence to that. Anywho, um, Claudia pledges, right? She comes out, she does her probate, and her character is that of a little girl. And she's disappointed because her whole thing is she's not a child. She doesn't want to have to navigate the world as a child. The only men who she can date are either perverts who want to be with a child or other children, which is abusive because she is very much a grown woman. So to be relegated to have to pretend to be a child for as long as she's a part of this theater company, I think she was very disappointed. So we see Armand, has this like hand flame thing or whatever. And Louis invites him in because he's like, you said when you met me that you would never harm me. Was that true or not? And, Armand, in seeing just how much Lestat is still in Louis's head, is like, did he break you in such a way that there is no room for me? If I got over him, you'll get over him. So that's when Armand reveals to Louis that, Lestat was also his lover, right? And I'm curious, did Lestat also abuse Louis, or is he just recovering from the fact that he was in love with him and he ghosted him? Like, what's the tea with that? So, yeah, Armand goes into Louis's house. Claudia then came out and pledged, as a vampire, and isn't really happy with the role that she's been given. But now I'm scared, like, what's going to happen to Claudia? Are they just letting her join because they know that she's going to die soon anyway, because her body is too young to endure vampirism for very long? I remember what happened in the movie, but I'm curious to see like how this is going to play out in the series, because I didn't read the books. I am considering going back and reading them though, because the book, like the source material, is usually better than the series or the movie. So we'll see. So that's it for episode 3. I'm also very curious to see like what these files that have been hacked into or shared with Daniel Malloy, like what will they reveal? And since Armand and Louis can read minds, they tend to always kind of know what's going on. Do they know what's going on? Like, did they set this in motion? Very excited to see. Like, I have to stop myself from binging this, because if I watch the episodes all the way through, it'll be really hard for me to not spoil them, and to keep them like separate in my notes. Like, I can keep them separate in my notes, but not like in my thoughts and in my mind. So that's it for episode 3. I'll be back for episode 4. Thank you for joining. Be sure to subscribe, comment, share, join the Patreon, tell someone that we're celebrating spooky season by talking about this series, and we'll be back soon. Bye.